Hello FPL managers and welcome back for another video. My name's Jack and today we're going to be rating your guys' drafts that you've sent in to us on Twitter. I'm going to be going over 5 teams, giving them a rating out of 10. If you're looking forward to the new season or are brand new to the channel, leave a like and subscribe and have those notification bells turned on so you don't miss any future FPL videos. Also, whilst I'm on the topic, make sure you follow us on Twitter as well so you don't miss out on the opportunity to be in any future videos or be featured in any upcoming videos. And with that being said, let's jump into it. So this first team was sent in by our good friend FPL West Ham. He's got triple West Ham in his team, of course. I felt that is a compulsory requirement if your name is FPL West Ham. This team is very, very interesting. It's got 3 starting forwards, which a lot of the drafts that were sent in to us don't have. It's going to be interesting to see, having a look at this draft, how it kind of sets up for the start of the season. I'm really intrigued by the 3 forwards formation, as it does allow you to have a lot of flexibility in your team by having 3 forwards. It gives you a lot more well-rounded squad. Obviously, by having a 4.5 forward in your side, that's already one slot used up where you're not going to be able to utilize that player to start them. So by having 3 starting forwards, you always have good options to play, which is why I've noted down flexible formation here. It also does give you a very, very good bench depth. As you can see, looking at his midfield as well, his weakest midfielder is Enciso, which is a pretty strong midfielder to have as your worst midfielder there. And of course, all 5 of his defenders are playing as well. Amari Bell should hopefully be fit to go for game week 1. And then he's got Botman there as his 4.5 defender, which will be consistently starting for Newcastle. So he's pretty much got an outfield set of 15 players, all which should be playing. So he's going to have a very, very strong bench, which can be very handy. He's also got a lot of good differentials in there as well. Bowen, obviously, him being a West Ham fan, is probably a compulsory player to have in the team. He's my favourite West Ham asset at £7 million. He's been excellent so far in pre-season. Was very, very good once again on his most recent game against Tottenham, providing a couple of assists for his teammates. So I think Bowen, a man in form, has been very good recently. I think he could be an excellent pick to have in the squad. Just 7 million in midfield. His price has decreased quite a lot from previous seasons. Obviously, coming off 200 points just a couple of years ago, I'm sure if he can recapture that form, he's going to be an extremely good value midfielder. West Ham also a side with some pretty decent starting fixtures. So if Bowen can make the most of those, I wouldn't be surprised to see his ownership skyrocket in the earlier stages of this season. The only downsides I see with this team, there's no Liverpool players in there, so no Salah in midfield, no Trent in defence. Both of these players are fairly highly owned, so it could be a little bit tricky at the start of the season if Salah and Trent do have good starts to their campaign. Those are 2 players with high ownerships that FPL West Ham doesn't have compared to a lot of the other competition. And me personally, touching on Enciso, I'm not a massive fan of him at £5.5 million. I'm interested to see what lineup Brighton go for in their upcoming USA Tour preseason games. If Enciso is getting the nod up top, then of course I think he's a good option at 5.5, but I think there's a little bit of uncertainty around him right now. I'm really intrigued to see what Brighton's formation and preferred starting attackers are on their preseason tour. And double Newcastle defence as well, Kieran Trippier and Botman both in there. I'm not a massive fan of the double Newcastle defence considering how poor their fixtures are to start the season. And also, at the back end of last year, Newcastle's defensive record was one of the worst in the Premier League. So I think for that reason, I'd probably personally be avoiding, especially Kieran Trippier at £6.5 million. I think double Newcastle defence is a little bit risky. But apart from that, a very, very good team. An extremely strong forward line with Jesus and Kunku Haaland. Rashford, Mbeumo, Saka and Bowen, a very good midfield. Luke Shaw I like at 5.5, as also do Stupinian there. And he's got double West Ham goalkeepers. I think West Ham have some pretty underrated fixtures to start the new season, so I give this team a 7 out of 10. Let's take a look at the second draft. This one was sent in by FPL Simbo. This is quite an interesting team. It's a 3-5-2 formation team which features 3 4.0 defenders. It's a very, very strong midfield and strong forward line team. Let's go through it now. The starting keeper is Pickford. He's got Areola there as his sub keeper. A fairly standard goalkeeping combination. I do like this goalkeeping combination. It is currently my personal 2 goalkeepers. He's got Bell starting for game week 1. He's got Brighton away. And looking at his bench, there is quite a bit to be desired in terms of that bench strength. He's got 3 4.0 defenders there as I touched on, Hill and Bayer there as the other 4.0s, and Bell are starting against Brighton away at 4.0. I'm not a massive fan of that. You definitely would want a stronger starting defender, at least a 4.5 defender in there. I would recommend in place of one of those 4.0 defenders, and Kiefer Moore on the bench. I don't think it's a very good option there at 5.0. If you're going to go for a cheap forward, just go to 4.5, give yourself that extra 0.5 million then to up around one of your 4.0 defenders to a 4.5 option to have a more well-rounded team. Looking at the midfield though, it is a very, very strong set of players in the middle of the park. Gibbs White, probably not my favourite pick at 6 mil. I think there are better options around his price point, but Saka, Rashford, Foden, Martinelli in midfield, a very, very good set of 4 players. I do like Foden especially since Mahrez just left Manchester City as well. He's gone to Al Ahly. So I think that just increases the chances of Foden getting minutes, especially when De Bruyne comes back. I think Foden will be a lot more favoured than he was previously, now that that's one less play in that Man City attack competing for his spot. So I think Foden could be a really good option this season at £7.5 million. Man City also have some great fixtures to start the new season as well, and that is why he has gone for a triple up on Manchester City. He's got John Stones at the back there, and if he plays in midfield once again like he did last season for Man City, or at the back end of last season for Man City, you could have a John at Lundstrom type of situation if he can get forward from open play and chip in with a couple of goals here and there, and a fairly stock standard front two of Haaland and Jesus, a pretty good forward line. But for me, the bench isn't quite good enough. I'm not a massive fan of Gibbs White, and having a 4.0 option and Bell starting isn't quite doing it for me, and that's why this draft does get a 5 out of 10 rating for myself. Let's take a look at the third team. This one was sent in by Roberto Hollas. I believe he's a Watford fan. This is quite a good team in my opinion. It scored 8 out of 10, which was one of the highest rated teams out of the ones I've gone through so far. He's got the goalkeeping combination of Pickford and Virginia. I think Pickford's a really good option at 4.5. He's currently my 4.5 goalkeeper, and I do think he's the best goalkeeper option at this price point, considering how good Everton's fixtures are to start the season. And now with Sean Dyche as their manager, I'm sure they're going to be a lot stronger defensively than they were for the majority of last season. Looking at the starting back three, Estupiñán, Gabriel and Trent, a very, very strong backline. I'm a massive fan of these three defensive picks. Gabriel and Estupiñán, I think, are good prices or good value picks at their price at 5.0. And of course, Trent, an attacking beast, picked up so many assists, especially at the back end of last year when he saw more time in that sort of midfield role that he's been playing recently for Liverpool. And the midfield 5 as well, very, very strong. I said previously that I'm a massive fan of Foden. I think he's going to be a really good pick now, especially seeing Mahrez leave that Man City attack. Then Matoma, Saka, Fernandes, Maddison, 4 very, very good midfield options. Fernandes and Maddison were 2 players that were in one of my earlier drafts for FPL this season. I think both of those guys are at a very, very good price, and they have great attacking potential in their sides. Fernandes now just 8.5, cheaper than Marcus Rashford, could be a superb value pick. Obviously, he's got penalties and free kicks, and now seeing him cheaper than Rashford, he could be the better value option between the two. And Maddison, I was expecting him to come in at 8.5, seeing him at £7.5 million is a very reasonable price point for him. We've seen how good Christian Eriksen was in that attacking midfield role for Spurs in previous seasons. I think Maddison could definitely match him for those huge FPL points scoring seasons that Eriksen had. I wouldn't be surprised if Maddison can notch up 180 plus FPL points this year with Son and Kane in that attack as well. He's got so much more quality up top to give the ball to compared to when he was at Leicester. And of course, Haaland, Jesus are very good at front too as well. He's got a couple of good 4.0s there, Baldock and Bell, 2 4.0s that I think should be starting. Baldock, a little bit more of a risk. There is a chance for some rotation between him and Bogle, but I think Baldock should get the nod to start the season, so I think he's a good 4.0, as is Bell, and Archer at 4.5 is not a bad option there as the cheapest possible forward pick. Overall, I do like this team at 8 out of 10. The only thing I would say is that not having Marcus Rashford could be a little bit risky. Obviously, an extremely popular midfielder to start the new season. If he has a great start, you could be hurt a little bit for FPL points. And 2 4.0 defenders, maybe you could look to go to a 4.5 defender. I know from this tweet, I believe he said he had 0.5 in the bank, so he could easily upgrade Baldock or Bell to a 4.5 defender. Would make the team a lot more well-rounded, but overall, a very, very good draft, 8 out of 10. So this draft is definitely a very, very interesting team. It's a 4-4-2 formation team. It's double Man City attackers up top. I wanted to go over this draft because it was a little bit different. I didn't want to go for all the template kind of drafts. He's got Haaland and Julian Alvarez up top. And originally I was thinking Alvarez. I'm not too sure about that pick. I've put a question mark next to his name here on the negatives dot points. But now after seeing Mahrez leave, maybe especially with De Bruyne out to start the season, Alvarez could get the nod for a couple of games. He started a lot of games at the back end of last year. It could definitely be the same once again this season, but of course with Pep there's always going to be rotation in that Man City team. Haaland probably is exempt from that rotation, but Julian Alvarez definitely amongst those players that'll be in and out of the team. But if he can get consistent minutes, and now seeing less Man City attackers being in the side, obviously after Mahrez leaving, there is definitely a higher chance this season of Alvarez getting minutes than in previous years. So if he can get consistent starts for Man City to have two quality Man City attackers in there, it could be an absolute goals fest for them this season. So that's a really interesting couple of forwards up top. I also wanted to touch on that midfield. A great midfield in my opinion. Saka, Fernandes, Martinelli, who's a great differential at under 15% ownership, and Heung-min Son as well. Another huge differential in midfield. I really, really like these differentials in this team. Martinelli and Son, two of my favourite differential midfielders in FPL to start the new year. Son with an extremely low ownership, around 5 or 6%. I think seeing his price drop so much with a new manager at Spurs, he could really thrive and be a great value FPL pick. And looking at the defence as well, a very, very strong defence, triple premium defence with Reece James, Shaw, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's got Flecken as his goalkeeper, who should get the nod for Brentford, and Estupiñán there as well. A very, very good side. I really like this team as a 4-4-2 formation. The starting 11 is extremely strong. Just a little bit of depth lacking in the bench. He's got Ndombele, Holgate, and Semenyo there as his three bench outfield players. So a little bit weak on the bench. Obviously, there's no starting 4.5 mids or forwards this season. So he could struggle a little bit for a rotation in this team if he's got to play with a bad fixture. He's just got one 4.0 option in Holgate, which could potentially play, but I would look to swap Holgate to either Bell, Baldock, or Bayer from Burnley. I think those three guys are good at 4.0. I think I'd probably swap Holgate for one of those three lads, then you do have a guaranteed playing 4.0, especially Bell or Bayer. Those are my two favourite 4.0 picks there, but otherwise, an extremely good starting 11. He's left a couple of manager comments here. He's got his Son and Alvarez differentials. I do really like those differentials as he touched on. He's got Reece James in there as his Chelsea option. He likes Chelsea to start the season. I think Reece James is a really good pick as well. He's a player that I've got in my current team. I think Chelsea have some excellent fixtures to start the new year, so I'm interested to see how those Chelsea picks play out, especially under a new manager. So overall, I give this team a 7.5 out of 10. It could have done with a slightly better bench, but otherwise a really good team with some great differentials in there. So let's take a look now at the last team on the list. This one was sent by FPL Mitrovic. This is a triple premium draft, an extremely rare type of draft to see at this point in the season. I actually haven't seen anyone submit a triple premium draft from all the drafts that were sent in. Apart from this one, he's got Salah, Kane, and Haaland, spending £39 million on just 3 players in FPL. It's a lot of money being spent, but let's see how it's worked out for FPL Mitrovic. Here he's got Sam Johnson in goals. Definitely not a bad pick. Crystal Palace have some okay fixtures to start the new year. Sheffield United away in game week 1. A great chance for a clean sheet for Crystal Palace. Looking at his back four, a very strong back four actually, still considering there is 3 premiums in this team. Obviously, no Liverpool defense. Definitely a little bit too expensive. I would say there's some of those Liverpool defenders there, especially when you have triple premiums in. It's going to be very hard to get in one of those expensive Liverpool options. Otherwise, he's got double Arsenal here with Gabriel and Saliba, 2 very quality defensive options to start the new season. I like both of those guys. I think their price is quite good at 5.0. Potentially a little bit risky going on double Arsenal defense. Maybe you could swap Saliba to another 4.5 option. Botman maybe there at 4.5. He could rotate well with some of those other 4.5 options, such as Pau Torres is on his bench, and Henry as well from Brentford. Otherwise, Gabriel, Estupiñán, 2 very, very good picks there in defense. Looking at his midfield, though, it is where the team does lack. Saka and Salah, 2 excellent options to have in midfield, 2 of my favourite midfield picks for FPL this season. But then looking at his other 2 midfielders, he's got Dwight McNeil and Andreas Pereira kind of ticking off that Fulham slot there. He doesn't have Mitrovic in the team, but he's got Andreas. I think Andreas at 5.5, not the worst option, but for me, probably not my favourite midfield pick, especially considering how good midfielders are this season. At just 1 to 2 million more than Andreas, obviously you could afford a really, really good quality midfielder, but by going for triple premiums, you don't allow yourself to do so. And Dwight McNeil, definitely a bit of a punt. He was pretty good at the back end of last year, had that excellent game away to Brighton, was one of the best performances I've seen Dwight McNeil play. in an Everton shirt there under Sean Dyche. So I think he could be an interesting one to look out for. He seems to be utilised very well under Sean Dyche's management. Obviously, McNeil's played with Dyche at Burnley, so he knows how to use him well. He's got Fulham at home game week 1. Definitely not the worst fixture, but it definitely is a huge punt gone for McNeil and Andreas in midfield. And the front two of Kane and Haaland doesn't get much stronger than that. The two best forwards in FPL, in my opinion. Looking at his bench, Pau Torres here at 4.5, a nice pick for Aston Villa. And then he's got a couple of minimum price players in forward and midfield. Riedewald there for Crystal Palace. There's obviously no playing 4.5 mids or forward, so it doesn't really matter who you've got in these two slots here. Overall, obviously having Kane, Haaland and Salah, that is a key strength of the team. There's some decent differentials in there as well with McNeil and Andreas, and there is really good transfer flexibility. You can easily drop down any one of your premiums to a cheaper option and then pretty much afford any upgrade that you would like in your team. For example, you can easily drop Kane down to Jesus to make a huge upgrade of either McNeil or Andreas. You could do the same thing with Mo Salah, drop him down to Rashford, then afford a massive upgrade between McNeil and Andreas if one of those guys aren't providing FPL points. Obviously in this team there's not great bench depth. It's a very top heavy team, so you've got 3 elite players in the side, but the rest of the team not the strongest. Obviously McNeil, Andreas, Saliba all starting, not the best picks in my opinion. And then obviously a risky squad setup, going triple premiums. Let's go big or go home. If Salah, Kane and Haaland go crazy, then you're absolutely grinning, but you do take the risk if they don't fire. You've spent a lot of money on those guys, and then the rest of your team is lacking a little bit compared to some of those other squads. So I've given this side a 7 out of 10. Definitely one of the better Salah, Kane and Haaland teams that you can make, but I still think triple premiums probably not the way to start the season. Double premiums at most for me is the best strategy, but overall 7 out of 10 for this draft. Thanks for watching today's rating drafts video for Game Week 1 of the new FPL season. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. I'd really be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on these drafts as well. What did you think of that triple premiums draft at the end? I think it could be interesting to see how that one plays out. As always, have those notification bells turned on so you don't miss any future FPL videos. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.